Good morning, everyone. I'm gonna give it a minute, make sure everyone can get connected to audio. So good morning. I am also, Zoom did an update, which I just love when Zoom does an update. And so now I'm trying to figure out where my buttons are. Okay, good morning, everybody. My name is Brittany Boston, and I am with the Illinois Center for Specialized Professional Support. And we are here to help facilitate and host the IBT professional develop meetings that we have been doing, not exactly every month, but close enough, as well as the operational meetings. And so this morning, we are here with Tasha Allen from ICCB to talk a little bit about career and technical education, as well as Angela Gerberding, Emma Goodwin, and Sarah Van Kirkley, who will be talking about some more IBT budget related things towards the end. But before I hand it over to our speakers, again, just a gentle reminder, we are in Zoom meetings. So you have the ability to turn your camera on. You have the ability to unmute yourself and communicate with us that way. We do just want to make sure you're mindful of that when our speakers are presenting, or if yourself as well. We will be recording this. So if you have to hop off for any reason, or if you want to refer back to it at a later date, it will be posted on the IBT webpage, which I will put in the chat momentarily. We have our captions available at the bottom of the Zoom toolbar. You can comment in the chat throughout the meeting today if you have questions or comments. And I believe that is everything. If there are any technical issues that you need assistance with, you can private message myself or Dalton Byers, and we will do our best to take care of you. Otherwise, I'm going to hand it over to Tasha Allen to get us started for the day.
Thanks, Brittany. Good morning, everyone. Thanks so much to Angela and Emma for having me today. I am Tasha Allen, and I'm the Associate Deputy Director for Career and Technical Education here at the ICCB. I've been with ICCB for about 11 years and have worked in the CTE division throughout my tenure here. I will say that when I first started at ICCB, I had no idea what CTE was, other than it was an acronym for a football head injury. With that being said, I know we probably have a mixed audience today in terms of the level of knowledge about CTE. So some of you will have to bear with me a little bit, and others of you, I really hope you learned something today. So let's dive in. CTE, what is the scoop? Hold on. Here we go. Okay. So what is CTE? CTE stands for Career and Technical Education. Other names you might hear for CTE include the trades. Vocational education is what it used to really be referred to, namely. CTE really is the backbone of our society. It's hands-on learning and doing, real-world skill building. CTE is also stackable. Earning you a certificate can create a seamless pathway to another certificate, and so on and so forth. An interesting CTE stat that I found when I was preparing for this presentation was 3.3 million college and adult students participate in CTE. That was around 2023. I would venture to guess it's probably more now. So chances are you or someone you know works in a CTE field and may not even know it. CTE really is everywhere. It's our healthcare system. It's the person who fixes your vehicle, the people who build our homes and fix our roads. Um, it really does connect us in so many different ways. That's why it's really of the utmost importance that we continue to strengthen that CTE pipeline. The structure of our modern life really depends on that. A really good example of this is ever since COVID, during and continuing now, really, we really felt the effects of not having enough healthcare workforce to fill the needs of our increasingly sick and aging society. So that's just one real world example of that. Where can you find CTE in Illinois? Your local community college will be the home of the CTE programs in your area. Again, I know we have a mixed audience here in terms of community colleges, CBOs, ROEs, and everything in between. So again, I apologize if some of this is a little repetitive, but just bear with me. Each of Illinois' 45 community colleges is locally controlled. What that means is that each college is responsive to its local area's needs. Programming offered in Chicago is going to look a little different than the programming offered in Southern Illinois. Um, of course, each college represents a diverse and unique area of our great state and provides students the support according. I'm sorry, provides support to students accordingly. The Illinois Community College System offers over 4,000 CTE degree programs, which are going to be your longer, typically 2-year associate and applied science degrees, and also certificate programs, which are typically shorter and can take anywhere from between 1 month to a year to complete, depending on the program. So these are some of the more popular, quicker to complete programs, which might explain their popularity a little bit. And you might find that they align with some of the activities in your grant projects. We do see a lot of connection with ICAPS programs, especially ICAPS programs in healthcare occupations. So what about the funding to support these programs? If you are familiar with CTE, then you're probably also familiar with Perkins. The federal Perkins grant is provided annually to each of the 45 Illinois community colleges and is the largest CTE grant program in the country. So not only the state, this is a federal grant. So each state receives funding for federal Perkins money. These funds can support CTE programs of study, but also can be used to support certain student populations. And we'll get into that slightly in a couple of slides. Other state-funded grant initiatives include the Pipeline for the Advancement of the Healthcare Workforce, or PATH initiative. That's our state healthcare initiative. That's a formula grant. That means that every college gets at least some money for the PATH program. Rev Up EV is another state initiative, and that's our electric vehicle technology grant. That's a competitive grant, so not every college has that. And the reason I'm telling you such specific information is if you, after this presentation, you feel like you want to reach out to someone who is responsible for administering any of these grant programs at your local community college, I just want to make sure you understand that not every college is going to have some of these grants. We also have the Taking Back the Trades grant. It's a competitive grant. We're in the 4th round of funding for that. And then advanced manufacturing. Again, another state-funded initiative, competitive. So again, not every college will have this. And this is new. We have not yet awarded any advanced manufacturing grants. The grant is not due until February of 2026, crazily enough. Okay. So as you are probably well aware, a lot of students that you are serving face uncertainty before deciding whether or not to go to college, go back to college, start over in a career. Common fears are, well, I didn't graduate high school, or I don't even know where to start. The good news is that CTE offers multiple entry and exit points for flexible learning pathways. That means that students can build skills and credentials as they progress with multiple options for entering or exiting the workforce at different points. Community college CTE programs are also partners with CBOs, local workforce agencies, and adult education programs. This makes students' journeys as seamless as possible and also makes it easier for a student to get their foot in the door, regardless of their current situation in life. So this is just a handy diagram that allows you to visualize more the multiple entry and exit points that can be used by students. So whether you're entering from an adult basic education program, whether you have previous post-secondary credentials or no credentials at all, whether you're entering from high school or just the workforce already, um, you can get what you need and then exit with an industry credential, a certificate, degree, etc. Okay, so let's dive in a bit to your grant and how it connects with CTE. As you're all well aware, the purpose of the IBT grant is to support the seamless transition of students between education systems and employment. So let's go objective by objective to see how CTE can be braided into each one. Objective 1, Adult Education Bridge and ICAPS programming. We've already mentioned ICAPS a little bit earlier, but CTE is a critical partner in a lot of ICAPS programs and has strong relationships with adult education providers. If Objective 1 is your focus, check with your local community college to see how you can more fully partner with your CTE folks. Objective 2, seamless transitions for college and career pathways. So community colleges are always looking for dual credit partners, especially dual credit partners that come knocking at their door. Trust me, if you want to partner with dual credit, go to your CTE folks. Career exploration. I think we can all probably admit that the coolest career exploration activities for students, especially younger students, are the hands-on, let me see how this thing works type career exploration. And CTE can absolutely support some of those efforts for students as low as fifth grade. Curriculum and program of study development, of course, apprenticeships, and other work-based learning opportunities. Work-based learning is ingrained in CTE. You can't have CTE without work-based learning because that's essentially the whole point of CTE. Just remember that CTE is hands-on real-world skill building, and these programs are made for this. Objective 3, wraparound support services. So CTE grant funds can be used to support holistic wraparound support services for students, both academic and non-academic. It is important for me to note that Perkins funds cannot be directly given to students. That means that the financial aid office will not be able to directly cut a student a check with Perkins money. However, all of our state-funded grants do have that ability to directly support students. And we have seen a lot of innovation come out of specifically the PATH grant, but also our Rev Up grant as well with direct student support. It's been very successful. So other supports, of course, academic supports, tutoring and mentoring, resume writing, interview preparation. I think everybody could use that. Transportation assistance, bus passes, gas cards, mileage reimbursement, childcare assistance or referral. Sometimes colleges have on-site childcare services. If not, a lot of times they have relationships with different community-based organizations, and some colleges actually give out waivers for students to be able to access those services at a less expensive price. So that's nice that that is an option. Textbook and laptop lending, tools or uniform lending, and testing expense assistance as well. And objective 4, which is the seamless transitions for students with disabilities. So Perkins has 9 special populations. If you are interested in learning more about those special populations, you can ask me or any of my colleagues at ICCB. Our friends at ICSPS have also created support strategy documents for retention and recruitment of these populations, and they're excellent and very thorough. Those can be accessed on their website, and I should have linked to those here. I'm sorry. So again, students with disabilities are a Perkins special population. What that means is that when colleges are writing their annual Perkins application, they have to specifically note how they are supporting students with disabilities. It's a question they're asked. So make that point of connection. Okay, so now that you have participated in this riveting presentation, what can you do with this information? Talk to your partners. That's number one. That's why I put it first. It comes before all else. If they aren't your partners yet, talk them into becoming your partner. I think we can all agree that you have to have a certain skill level of persuasion to be in this industry that we're in here. Find points of connection with one another. Find points of connection with your grant activities, your goals, and then the goals and activities of others at your partner institutions, people you already have connections with. Don't duplicate services or try not to. I know it's hard. Even here at ICCB, we duplicate things too. I think it's natural, but try not to. And again, this is why I put talking to your partners first, because you have to have those relationships and understand what one another's doing before you can know if you're duplicating services. Um, Instead of that, try to use innovative strategies to fill those gaps. So once you make those connections and talk to each other, think, oh, we're doing that. Well, we're doing that too. This is where we're seeing a need. Hey, we are too. Let's try to fill that gap. Um, Participate in advisory committee meetings to get ideas, offer ideas, and form relationships with other stakeholders. So at the college, community colleges, CTE programs are required to have an advisory committee for each of their CTE programs, and they have to meet at least once a year. Typically, we see the advisory committees meeting twice a year. Best practice, of course, is that they meet more, even more often than that, just to keep those connections going, but it's hard and everyone has a busy schedule. So those groups are already there. So put yourself in there, say, hey, is there any way I could come to this advisory committee meeting? You can meet other people and get ideas. Um, so that's another good point of connection. Again, just remember that CTE is flexible and made to be responsive to local needs. Use that to your advantage. Talk to your partners. And then the last two bullet points here are resources I'm sure you already have, but I wanted to put them here just in case. So we have an interactive community college locator tool. So if you are a CBO and you're like, man, I have several partners, I have several community colleges in my area, or, I'm not quite sure who would be my community college, you can use that tool. You put in your zip code and it pulls up what community college district you're in. So it's really helpful. It's also a really good resource for students. We have two other excellent resources. We have the post-secondary profiles tool, and we also have the directory of programs. So use those yourselves, give those to your clients or your students for them to use as well. I do have a couple of minutes to answer questions if you have any. If not, thank you for your time. I hope this was worthwhile. I hope it wasn't too in depth in certain areas and I didn't breeze over too much. I could talk about this stuff for a long time, but I know we don't have that. So if there aren't any questions, you can always reach out to me. Any of my other CTE colleagues are very knowledgeable as well. And I do see that someone has raised their hand.
Oh, Brian, I can see your lips moving, but I don't hear any sound, which is odd. Tasha, can you plug your email into the chat?
Yeah.
Oh, and it's on that slide. We'll get the slides from Tasha. We will share them out with the group. But I just wanted to plug that in there so if people have questions, they can get that. They don't have to wait for me and Emma to send them an email. They can just have your email and start emailing right away.
Can you guys hear me now?
Yes.
Yep.
All right. Don't know what that was. Thanks, Tasha, for that. And maybe my question is silly, but Um, how do we use the like acronym CTE in relation to the acronym WFD for workforce development? Is there any like connection between those two? Because I've like tried to speak when I'm like writing and like proposing and explaining, and I've never quite distinguished what's what. So maybe that's just an interesting kind of topic to discuss here.
Yeah. No, thanks, Brian. I appreciate that. The way that I look at it is, so when we think about workforce development holistically, it's kind of everything, and everything we do here at the agency for sure, is sort of a pathway to that. So I think of CTE in a similar way. So they're not necessarily, interchangeable acronyms. More like CTE is a pathway, is a tool for people to either get into the workforce or to develop those skills that they need to enter the workforce. People who are already in the workforce can upskill or reskill and get back out there. So thinking of it more as like part of that pathway into workforce development. Does that help? Does that make sense?
He gave a thumbs up, so I think that's a yes.
Thanks.
Yeah, that was great. I kind of get the idea of like workforce development being the bigger umbrella and CTE being like the kind of a tool to
Yes.
progress along that. I like that.
Yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Anything else?
Questions? Okay. Thank you, Tasha, for your time. That's great information. I mean, I knew most of that, but I also used to be on the CTE side of things. So, so I was like, oh yeah, that does fit in there. Oh, I forgot about that piece. So good. And
Very
if
welcome.
anyone's got questions, you're welcome to reach out to Tasha. And after this, if you forget Tasha's name or you didn't write the email down, you can also shoot Emma and I an email and say, okay, so there was a woman on there that was talking about CTE. I forgot her name. Can you connect me? And yes, we will. Yes, we can. So thank you, Tasha, for your time. I know you've got to run to another meeting. So
You're
thank
very
you.
welcome. Thanks, everybody. Good luck with your grants.
All right. So moving on, the other piece of this that we're going to talk about today is ways to spend all of your IBT money. I know that you probably feel like we're a broken, Emma and I are somewhat of a broken record on this topic, but the importance of this is we really need everybody to spend as much of their money as humanly possible. Because as we've said before, when you all return money, it doesn't go back into the Angela and Emma fund. It doesn't go into our vacation account. None of that happens. We don't see any of that money. So really the people that are going to benefit most from these dollars are your students or your clients, your attendees, call them whatever you want to call them. They really are should be the recipients of the benefits of the money. So I am going to try to screen share and see if this works right and make it all do what I want it to do. All right, but I also have to make it in presentation mode if it'll let me. Come on. And sorry. So do you see only the screen or do you see screen and next slide? Yay. All right. So ways to spend all of your IBT money. And while Tasha took a little less than half an hour, I don't think I'm going to take a full amount of time either. Emma and I looked at Q3 reports, reached out to many of you and said, hey, it looks like you're a little bit low on spending. Do you have a plan? Tell us your plan. Do you need help figuring out how to spend money? Several of you, I think most all of you, I haven't heard an update from Emma. I think most everyone has responded at this point with, this is our plan, this is what we're going to do, or holy cow, we have money that we haven't spent, we need a meeting. Both of those are acceptable options because we would rather figure those things out now than waiting to the last month or 2 weeks before the end of the grant. And I'm going to pick on Brian because he's the face I can see. And Brian sending me a panicked email going, oh my God, $50,000, I don't know how to spend it. Okay, well, now you can't move it. So don't wait till 2 weeks is what I can tell you. So we're going to talk about some different ways that you can spend all of your IBT money, because we really are looking for you to spend as much as humanly possible on the grant. Yes, returning money is allowable. It's acceptable. It's okay. $20 a program means that we have $800 roughly coming back. Not a big deal. But when each of you return $1,000, now we're looking at $40,000 that's coming back to the agency. And as I said, it doesn't go in the Angela and Emma fund. It also doesn't go in the ICCB fund. It has to go back to the legislature because it's part of the state budget. And so it just has all of these ripple effects when a lot of money is being returned. So if we can get all of the programs to spend as much as possible, that would be fabulous. So jumping right into this, you might want to consider a budget modification. And some of you have already done some, and we got a bunch of those approved in the last week or two. But you might want to consider a budget modification if your program has extra money in any category. Talk to your fiscal. If you are on the programmatic side, talk to your fiscal people and have a real life conversation. Where are we? Where are we spending? Where are we not spending? Where do we have money left? Maybe you served fewer students than planned. Something happened, and we've had a location that had a fire that they couldn't serve the students because they didn't have a location to have the students. That impacted, they were not able to hire an instructor. So now they've got money in personnel, they've got money in their miscellaneous costs, they've got some different money out kind of floating around because of one thing. So if you've got some of those things going on, maybe you needed more classes. You had a large number of students come in than you were anticipating, and you had to hire another instructor. So you need to move money into personnel to cover those costs, but that means you need to move money out of something else. But then maybe you had other funds that came available. Maybe a local employer said, hey, don't buy that piece of equipment, that welder that you need. We're going to buy 4 tanks for you, welding tanks, acetylene tanks for your program instead of you buying them. And you're like, yay, crap. Now I have extra grant money I was going to spend on equipment. Now I have to figure out what I'm going to do with it. So those are great partnerships and great things to have. But then you're like, how do I spend it? What can I do? So we're going to talk about what each of those budgets can do. How do you know if a budget amendment is required? The required piece of this, if you want to spend money, if you want to spend money in a category that has not had money in it before. So like I said, maybe you had a teacher that you weren't able to hire. Or hiring just took longer than you anticipated. You didn't get a good hire in place. You have extra money in personnel. But now you want to purchase welding equipment. Well, you never had welding equipment. You never had any money in the equipment line to begin with. It was at $0 to start. You must do a budget mod in order to put money into that account that started at 0. If you're putting it into an account, into a category that already had money, maybe not. But if you're moving money into an account that was initially 0, you must do a budget amendment that we have to approve. The second one is if you want to move more than $50,000 or 10% of the overall budget across the grant year. Now, this is a change this past year. And previously it was $10,000 or 10%. Now it's $50,000 or 10%. And it is across the grant year. So what that means, I'm trying to find another. Brian's still the only program person I can see, so I'm still going to pick on Brian. Brian moves $20,000 in quarter 2. He moves $20,000 in quarter 3. No budget modification is really required at this point because he's only at the $40,000 mark. In quarter 4, he decides now he's going to move $15,000. He just crossed that $50,000, and he has to do a budget modification that is going to reflect all of those changes all the way through. So if you think you're going to do a large dollar amount move, you are safest to do a budget modification so it's already tracked and going. Now, if you think I've only got $500 I need to move here and $500 there, and then maybe it's not as necessary. Just know that when you hit that $50,000 or that 10%, you're going to have all of it documented. And that is your responsibility to track. We are not, Emma and I and our fiscal staff are not tracking all of that. We can help you. If Brian reaches out and goes, okay, am I at 49,000 or am I at 51,000? We can help you figure that out and make sure everything matches right. But it's really on the program side, the grantee side, to say, hey, I think I may be close. let me know what I need to do, and we'll help you with that. But that's really your responsibility to track all of that. Again, as we tell you lots of times, if you have questions, please, 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 please reach out to Emma and I. We will help you with these as much as we can. All right, to do a budget modification, what do you have to do? You're going to complete the budget modification form, and we're going to send you several things following this notification. We're going to send it to the listserv, so you've got all these forms. So the budget modification form, you're going to determine if the change you're making in spending impacts your performance measures. Because like I said, maybe you're going to serve 50 students instead of 20 students. You want to, I mean, you can claim that, but you want to capture that. And so you may need to adjust your performance measures chart. Maybe you're adding a new program. Maybe you were going to serve 20 students in healthcare, but now you're going to serve an additional 30 in automotive. Those are different performance measures. So you may need to adjust your performance measures chart. When you go into Amplifund or UNA, we're all still adjusting to that name change. You're going to submit, they call it a budget amendment instead of modification. We're going to email you those steps. We've emailed those out before, but we will email them again so everybody knows what steps are where to the listserv. You're going to upload your budget in that. You're going to do what all the steps are. You're also going to make sure you upload the budget modification form and your performance measures chart if you need to. If there's no changes on your performance measures chart, you don't need to update it. If you want to send us one, you can. Totally up to you. But that's the if needed piece. We need you to do the budget modification form. And then you're going to wait for us to approve before you spend the money. And we have up to 30 days to approve budget modifications. As I said, we got a whole bunch of them approved within the last week or two. Thank you to Sarah and her team. But we do have 30 days, and there are times that we are swamped with lots of different pieces. And so it may not be a quick turnaround on budget modifications, but we are watching them, we are flagging them, and we know we have 30 days. I cannot see the chat from where I'm at. So, okay, good. It doesn't look like anything's been added. If somebody adds something, somebody shout out and we'll do that. Do I need to pause for questions? All of this is clear. We're good. All right. How soon do you have to decide? Do I need a budget modification? Do I not? When does that happen? Okay. The absolute last day to submit a budget modification, budget amendment for the FY25 IBT grant is February 1, 2026. And I will tell you that I have seen other grants that have set a deadline, and grantees have submitted something on, like in this example, February 15th or March 1st, and we have denied it because they are past the deadline. The deadline is there for a reason. Please don't push it, because we don't like sending denials. We really don't. It's not fun. But we will if we need to, because we've set a deadline and we need everybody to adhere to that same deadline. Now, keep in mind, if you wait until the last day and everybody decides to wait till the last day, there may be a large group of you that we're trying to process through in those same 30 days. So it may take a little longer to get through the actual approval process. So while February 1 is the last day, maybe plan January 15th, January 20th. That would be even better, and make sure you're getting those all done. And in January, you're working on your quarterly reports, which are due January 30th. So you should be looking at your budgets at that point going, ooh, we need to move this. We're going to need to move that. We've got too much here, too little here. And that's a great time to use that as a catalyst to talk with your fiscal people to make sure everybody's on the same page and everybody knows where you're at. For the quarter report, budget modification due date, just keep those things moving. One thing I do want to mention with the budget modification is that, and Sarah, you just sent me a message. Make the statement, because I'm not going to get it right, because I've already blanked on what it was you said.
It's okay. When we were talking about making adjustments to the budget, that's generally discretionary spending, meaning that what's set in the budget, you can breach that, if you will, by 10% of the total award, or $50,000, whichever is lower. But please do not change your budget on your fiscal reporting form without an approved budget modification.
Right. And I think I have that later, so we'll hit it again, but I'm not certain. So I wanted to make sure we got that in there.
Gotcha. Awesome. Thank you.
Okay. All right. When do I have to decide? What spending goes in which category? So this is where, what are the categories? What can you put in them? What does this look like? And I have heard over the years on different grants that some fiscal departments have their own, for whatever reason, rules on you can only spend out of personnel for this grant. You can only spend out of supplies for this grant. What I'm going to tell you is what is allowable by ICCB for the categories. You still have to play nice with your own internal fiscal people. I am not telling you to go to war with them on any of these. If they say this is the end deal, fight the battle you need to fight. I can, provide you with whatever you need, but just know that I'm not telling you argue with your fiscal people because you all have to play nice internally. But these are allowable at the state level by ICCB. So in personnel, it's pretty obvious, pretty straightforward. This is in the payment that goes to staff. So directors, instructors, tutors, coordinators, student workers, any of those payroll type of things go in personnel. Fringe, this includes the benefits for the staff listed in personnel. They kind of typically go together. Those are kind of the easy ones. Travel. This could include travel to and from conferences, any required meetings, going from class location to class location, etc. This particular travel is for staff. This is not student travel. This is staff travel. All right. Supplies.
Angela.
Yes, Chris.
And I also want to add that travel is for your actual travel. Your conference registration should generally go under the training and ed. So it's something that if it's like that's the only problem in your budget, we'll generally let it slide. But yeah, the appropriate,
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. Thank you, Chris. Supplies would include materials that are consumed during the life of the grant. So it could be office supplies, but it could be textbooks. It could be laptops, classroom needs, a variety of things can go in supplies. Equipment. This includes material that is tangible personal property that lasts longer than the life of the grant and costs more than $10,000 per item. So an example of that might be equipment for training purposes. Like I said, a big welder. The tanks are not really $10,000, but a big welding equipment piece. A big CD printer, depending on how, not CD, 3D, sorry, I'm showing my age here. A big 3D printer, depending on how large it is and what you're doing, or a cutter in manufacturing. Some of those pieces of equipment are very expensive. So those would go in the equipment line. But it's also rechargeable, maybe a rechargeable laptop station with a laptop. So the individual laptops probably are not $10,000 each. If they are, you're getting a really nice laptop, and we are going to really question what you're doing with that laptop. But if it's a whole station that's a rechargeable station with all the laptops, you could easily get over $10,000. So again, keep that amount in mind. Also, equipment. If you're purchasing equipment, you will need to report that at the end of the year on a closeout report, just as for tracking purposes. Contractual services. This would include products or services procured by a contract. So if you're using subaward, those budgets typically go in this category, but it could also include exam fees if they're purchased with a contract, maybe seats in a virtual program. This is where it gets kind of squishy, for a lack of good fiscal financial term, because it's like, are you buying them outright? Then maybe they would go in supplies, maybe they go in miscellaneous cost. But if you're purchasing them with a contract because you're procuring them because of the way your agency is set up, then they go in contractual. So it depends on, that's where your fiscal people need to be in the conversation so they can tell you how this is happening, so you know what that looks like. Consultant, these are usually professional services. This could include something like curriculum designers or other types of consultants that you have coming in working with your students or your program. Again, keep in mind, all of these categories must be tied to grant activities. I know I read a grant at one point, I'm not even sure which grant it was, they included sexual harassment training for all of their staff. All of their staff. And it was like, maybe for your staff that are on this grant, but we can't, that's like 3 or 4 people listed in personnel. But the way they had it listed was that they were going to do it for the 50 people in their agency. Okay, that I can see Sarah's face already in fiscal going, that's not going to happen. We can't, we have to do our due diligence and not fund that. We have to deny that option. So
it creates an issue of allocability because the grant program staff only make up 3 of said individuals, whereas 50 were being provided the training.
yes. So, occupancy is allowable within IBT, and this would include rent and utility payments, but we need to know what the apportionment is in relation to the grant activities. So again, I can see Danielle. So at this point, I'm going to pick on her. She's got a location that she's going to rent the space on, but there's only 1 of 5 classes that is an IBT class that's using that space. So really, she should be charging 20% of the rent or 20% of the utility to this grant because it's 1 of 5 versus covering 100% of all of it. So that's where we need those details that come into play with this. More categories. Telecommunications. Could be cell phone plans or internet plans, depending on how that's all laid out. I know some programs will buy coordinators, cell phones or internet plans because when they travel to offsite locations, they have to be able to communicate with students, recruit students, do testing on students, register students, do whatever. So that's where that fits, is typically in the telecommunications line. Again, if it's an apportionment part, fine. I mean, and usually we can tell looking at the dollar amounts you're wanting to spend, we can get a pretty good idea if this is a full amount or if this is a portion. Training and ed. This is something Chris mentioned. This includes training for employees. I know when I first started looking at budgets here at ICCB, I was like, but training and education, that's for students. That's what we do. That's where it all goes. No, it's not. Training and education is specifically for your staff and your employees. So your conference fee, so this, as Chris said, your travel to the conference, the hotel, the mileage, the per diem, that all goes in the, could go in the travel category, would go in the travel category. Your conference registration cost would go in training and education. But it could also cover certification fees. Maybe you need to get your instructor recertified in welding to teach that class. So the instructor's certification fee would go in the training and education. Again, exam fees as part of professional development. Those are the pieces that can go in training and education. All right, miscellaneous costs. This is the everything else fits in here category. Everything else that's allowable, not covered in other categories. The most common spendings that we see in this are tuition reimbursement, stipends, gas cards, etc. to the students. That's where a lot of that fits into this. Questions on any of these that I've said so far? Do you all have, oh, we want to do this, I think it goes here, does it? I can confirm or deny any of those. I've got fiscal people on, we can confirm, deny. If you've got those questions, now is your opportunity. Or you can put it in the chat. You're all being very quiet. Okay, I'm going to go with, that means this is all clear and you're only going to have fabulous spending and you're going to spend all of your money and you're going to do a perfect budget modification with no questions. And that's okay. When the questions come up, send them our way, because please, I totally get it. And if you go back and you talk to your fiscal department, Danielle goes back and has a conversation with her fiscal department, says, hey, I want to put money here. And they go, no, that's not where you spend it. And you go, but Angela said, I'm okay with Angela said. Loop me in on an email, set up a Teams call, a Zoom call with your fiscal department. I am happy to meet with any or all of those because we want to make sure you guys are able to spend money as you can. Vicky, I see you raised your hand.
Well, I just did a budget modification and the request is to go back and use the form from the website. So there's a form on the website that needs to be and uploaded in addition to what was uploaded inside the system, the UNA system, correct?
Okay. Yes.
Sarah's nodding yes. Okay.
Okay. Well, that was an easy question. I like those. Those are fabulous. But we also deal with more complicated, so that's all right too. All right. Moving on to the last category in the budget, which is always great fun. Indirect cost. And that's why Sarah is on the call. So there's a variety of ways to utilize indirect cost dollars. If you have ideas or questions, you can send them my way, and I will probably automatically or Emma, we will automatically forward them to Sarah and Chris and be like, tell me if this is going to work. Tell me if this is not going to work. How does this work? Do you want to respond? Do you want me to respond? What do you want to do with this? But I'm going to turn this over to Sarah. I'm going to stop sharing. I'm going to turn this over to Sarah, and she's going to share some information about indirect cost that you all can also share with your people internally and see how that goes. Sarah, do you have sharing power? And you're muted.
This says host disabled attendee screen sharing.
Okay, so Dalton.
Taken care of.
Awesome.
Thanks.
There we go. Now it's letting me. Thank you so much, Dalton. Appreciate it. So can everybody see?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm going to talk for a second about some indirect cost calculations and hopefully help you do those correctly. It is not letting me see what I am. There we go. Okay.
Technology is great, right up until it doesn't work. Just
well, it's
exactly like
just
you want.
showing me a tiny little snippet of what I'm presenting instead of. Oh, there's a settings button. Maybe that'll let me change it. Okay. So indirect cost calculations are the process for determining the proportion of an organization costs that are administrative or kind of the overhead, if you will. And for GATA covered awards, which IBT is, the grantor has to allow the grantee to charge indirect costs according to their documented indirect cost rate election. So unless you have specific regulations or policy from the federal awarding agency, which in the case of IBT, we do not because it's a state grant, then, the de minimis or NICRA is what would apply. And so we've got several agencies that have de minimis and several colleges that also have de minimis, which is that standard 15% rate. There are a handful of grantees that may not realize that their indirect cost rate changed between FY24 and FY25. So that rate changed from 10% to 15%, which is a 50% increase. So it's a significant increase, especially if you're trying to recover some of those, overhead costs, if you will, in calculating your indirect costs. So there's an election that you make annually in GATA that basically is either the de minimis or you upload your NICRA or negotiated indirect cost information. We're not going to touch on rates and caps because there are no caps in IBT, but generally speaking, the MTDCs or modified total direct costs include salaries or personnel, wages, fringe benefit, travels, materials or supplies, and services that are directly performing grant activities. And I know we touched on consultants earlier, and Angela had mentioned curriculum development. If curriculum development is considered a direct activity for that program, that consultant can actually be categorized as a contract and included in the base for calculating indirect costs for grantees who have de minimis or who have a NICRA that includes MTDCs, which that does happen sometimes. And up to the first $50,000 of each subaward is eligible to be included in the base when calculating indirect costs. And so anything in excess of that $50,000 would be excluded from the base. So say you had a $55,000 contract that was for a service that is a direct activity in the program, the first $50,000 could be included in the base towards that 15% de minimis rate, but that $5,000 beyond the 50 would have to be excluded from the base. Speaking of what's excluded from MTDCs or modified total direct costs. That would be equipment. Equipment's never in the base for calculating indirect costs. Tuition, rental costs like occupancy, if you will, remission, scholarships, any participant support costs should not be in the base when calculating indirect costs. And then sometimes there are other things that are excluded just to try to keep that distribution of indirect costs even across agencies. We do have a tool that's available on our website, and basically you just go to iccb.org, click on grants and go to resources, and then there's a spreadsheet you can download. If that spreadsheet will not accommodate your particular NCRA, just let me know and I can change it in about 5 and get it altered and sent back so that it will work for your NCRA. Does anybody have any questions, comments, or complaints about calculating indirect costs? I know I jumped through that kind of fast, but I just kind of wanted to touch on a few things and then answer questions if anybody had them.
So, Sarah, do a lot of our programs use indirect cost or they don't? And I'm just not familiar with indirect cost stuff very much. So that's where I'm like, Sarah, help us out.
Right. So generally speaking, with indirect costs, the federal programs usually have a cap of 5% on the total award. And for some of those programs, you've got to use the rate to get up to the cap. That's kind of the big misunderstanding between rates and caps, is that people think that a cap is a substitute for the rate or a replacement of the rate, and that's not the case. You use the rate to get up to the cap. But like I said, that doesn't apply to IBT. I would say maybe half of the grantees utilize indirect costs. And one thing that I wanted to mention here is sometimes if you budget for indirect costs and don't end up needing all of, what you budgeted for indirect costs, you can spend what is in your grant budget for indirect costs on direct activities. And of course, that operates within that 10%, $50,000 threshold. So say you're at the end of your grant and you could really use, another $2,000 in supplies, but you've, not claimed all your indirect. You can certainly use $2,000 from indirect on supplies or personnel or whatever it is that the program needs. Flip side of the same coin, if you get to the end of your grant and you've budgeted the max for indirect costs, but there's this chunk of money that you haven't spent yet and you haven't claimed indirect. We've had a couple of instances where something happened, maybe a student issued a refund or, say a shipment of supplies got damaged. And so the vendor, issued a credit to the grantee. Then that leaves those funds unspent technically, right? If you've not budgeted the maximum amount for your indirect costs, then you're not in a position to do a revised closeout and just claim those otherwise unspent funds in your indirect category. However, if you did budget the maximum allowed for indirect and you get to the end of an award and you have, a return or a refund or something like that occur, then you certainly can submit a revised closeout report and take those funds on indirect instead of returning them. So budgeting for indirect costs, especially to the maximum that's allowed, can be very helpful if you're trying to make sure that all of the funds are expensed for an award.
And if you have questions on what all of that means exactly, because I'm programmatic and not fiscal. I tracked through the vocabulary that she said, but some of it I was like, oh, hold on. Her email is on the screen and I will forward these slides also with the email, and you and your fiscal people are welcome again to reach out to Emma and I or ask, or reach out to Sarah and ask her. Your indirect people, your fiscal people may have a very clear understanding of this and know exactly what she's talking about. And if they don't, you're welcome to reach out and ask us questions. We're good with that. All right. Yep. Sarah, if you stop sharing, I will share my last slide, which actually is what we talked about earlier, but I'm still going to share it because I did it. Share. And you see my slide, right?
Yes.
Okay. So how does show spending that doesn't require a budget modification. So like earlier, if you need to move small amounts of money from one category to another, on your quarterly report, you'll report overspending in one category and underspending in the other category. So you took $200 out of supply or $200 out of personnel, you moved it into travel to get everything covered. So you underspent, you overspent. However, the line that had your budget amount listed, don't change that because that is still your approved budget. What you're moving, we will know that you went over or under in your lines by where you tell us you spent the money. And we can do the math and go, oh, it's 2%. It's less than 10%. It's less than $50,000. We're good. But the overall budget amounts for each category do not change. And we've had programs that have, across various grants and different, all kinds of things, that just are like, oh yeah, I moved this money, so I'm going to change my budget. You can't do that. We have to approve your budget. We're working. So then you send your quarterly report in, and I look at it, or Emma looks at it, or Sarah looks at it, or Chris looks at it and goes, these numbers don't match. What are we doing? Did they plug in the wrong, did they plug in their Perkins money for this grant? Did they plug in their adult ed money for this grant? What are they doing? Where are they at? And so so don't change the budget amount. That should be, now, once we do a budget modification and that's approved, then yes, then that budget column gets changed. But if you're just doing the little small amounts of over under on your other lines, that shows up in your expense line, not in your actual budget line. Okay.
Thank you for that clarification.
Hopefully
Because what happens when I see the budget different on the report than what I have tracked is I start to worry I missed a budget modification.
Yes. And she starts emailing me and Emma. If you have questions, as we have said before, and I know I am watching the clock and I know we are right at time, please, please, please reach out to us. Emma or me, either one of us, we will help you figure out how to spend. Hopefully this was helpful. It gave you some ideas on ways that you can spend. Again, if you talk to some of your fiscal people and they come back and they go, are you sure? Set up a meeting with us and we'll talk them through it. And maybe it's just an internal policy, and then good luck. But that's the PD session for today. So you got a little bit about CTE, you got a little bit about budgets and where you can spend your money. January, our next meeting will be in January. I don't have that number on the top of my head, but that is our operational meeting, and that one is required. So please make sure you have you and or someone, at least one from your organization, planning to attend that January meeting. And thank you, Emma, January 20th. If you don't have the meeting invite for that, let us know. If your fiscal people don't have it and they want it, you can forward it to them. That's fine. Happy holidays. I hope everyone is able to take some time and take a break and not do work over the holidays. We all need to decompress for our own mental stability and well-beings. So please take that time as you all deserve. And have a happy holidays, and we will see everyone in January. Thank you.